Hello, my name is Devin Gleason. I'm interviewing Devin Gleason, and I'm using a set of questions given to me by Clinton Callahan about men. And I've looked at the questions already, and in a way, I want to say that already one of my limits as a man who grew up in modern culture, and it's habitual, is that I would look at these questions and try to have a script or a preparation for them. In other words, I would try to know an answer ahead of time that I would deliver that with the hope that it would have a certain kind of effect on you. And what that means is I'd already be limiting what kind of resources can speak through me, what kind of things I've maybe never even said about men, about being a man who grew up in modern culture. And I want to do something different here. So my offer to you for this video is I'm interviewing Devin Gleason with questions from Clinton, and I do not have a script here. What's coming is what comes here now in the moment and may never come again from me. So we proceed to the first question. The first question is, what is the predicament of men in modern culture? I used to work for corporations. I started my career working in corporate marketing for pretty big corporations, high-tech corporations in Seattle. And what I remember about myself and what I remember about the men that I was working with is that we had these roles to fill. I want to say maybe it was true of the women too, but I'm talking about men. We had these roles that we fulfilled, and for me it was being involved in corporate marketing, but there was also sales teams. There were also, teams all throughout the organization. And when I got to know men in this corporation more deeply, the first one I worked for, what I was surprised, in a way surprised about, but it's also kind of obvious, is that many of these men had no loyalty or alignment with the company we were working for. What we had was uh, I've got to make money. I've got to make a living. This is good enough. I'm good enough at it. And if I asked men that question, they would start to talk about it. But for the most part, many of these men were not even asking themselves the question, how can I be giving my life to something that I actually have no passion for, I have no life for? Uh, and the layer down will be probably, well, I have to make money. It's like, well, where does that really come from? The idea that I have to make money, and that in order to make money, I would give my limited life force to a company that I may not have any alignment with. And what I've come to over the years is that we're trained from a very young age, being in school, to be able to do this, to be able to, without question, give our lives to something we may or may not even believe in, that may or may not have anything to do with our values. And much of this, starts in the home. We see our parents giving their lives to jobs, occupations, etc. It might be not at all in alignment with their values. But then there's 13 years of formal education where, how many people in your formal education sat you down and said, I want to know what your real qualities are, what your real values are, who you are deep inside. Forget homework, forget all these assignments. I want to know who you are. That's who I want in the world. It's like I had maybe one or two people in my whole school career who had one or two conversations with me that were not even that, but that were what I experienced with these one or two people was I could actually talk to them. And they were not even teachers, they were like substitute teachers. So this is however many years of having to learn all this stuff in a particular environment, supposedly preparing you or me for real life. And then this whole other thing that you're being, what you actually are, there's never any real question about that. What do you think that after 13 years, really longer, what do you think that does to your sense of your own being? My experience is that if my being, my essence is fundamentally who I am, by the time I left school, I was so divorced from that that I had no clue really what I cared about, what I wanted, what mattered to me. But what I did have was this sense that I need to make money to live. And there's a very narrow way to do that. And that's basically to work for someone else, and maybe that someone else sort of kind of aligns with my values, but that's not the most relevant question. I could say so much more about that, but you know, there's a uh, rock opera called Hair, and there's a film called Hair that is this rock opera. And the last song in the film is called The Flesh Failures. And there's a video of it online. You just type in Hair Flesh Failures, it'll be the first music video that comes up. And it's worth watching because you get to see all of these men walking, marching to their deaths in Vietnam. This is Vietnam era, wondering who they are. They have no idea who they are. They have fantasies about what society's told them. They're disillusioned about the nation they grew up in, and yet they are submitting themselves as cannon fodder, basically. And this, to me, is the predicament of men growing up in modern culture, is that from a very young age, who you are is irrelevant. Who you really are is irrelevant in modern culture. So that's what it starts with. And so that who you are is permanently frozen in who you are when people stopped asking you that question. So it's permanently frozen in this kind of infancy. And the result is by the time men become adults, they have adult bodyhood. What's left is someone who doesn't really know who he is, who's giving his life to something that he may or may not align with in his being, but that doesn't matter. What you end up with are basically boys in adult bodies who cannot take a stand for what they actually care about, who couldn't really tell you what they actually care about. And even if they make it to adulthood and they do have some sense of what they really care about, they mostly do not put that care at the center of their lives. So for me, that's part of what's lost in modern culture is there's this incredible potential inside of men, women too, but talking about men, there's this incredible potential to care, to hold space in the world, to be a stand, to stand alongside other men. And from the lowest level, from like what do I mean by that? I mean from the level of the family all the way up to the global level, that even inside you, there's a seed and it cannot be crushed. No matter what, the seed, it can't be crushed. That's what's so amazing. It cannot be crushed. But modern culture supplies you with no tools for developing that seed. And so you reach adulthood with a seed that's obscured, that's hidden, that's never been cultivated. This is good news because you could start cultivating it now. Like you could make your life for a while about honoring, protecting, learning about that seed and letting it bloom. Okay. I don't know how long we're in, but I'm going to move on to the next question. What is the predicament of life on Earth now? the animals and ecosystems due to men's crap. What I want to say first is that you there are many people who, how do I want to say this? Men have something baked into them that when they hear feedback about men, this is really the majority of men, they'll have a defensive reaction that will prevent that feedback from coming in. There's so many ways this manifests, but it's like if even think in a close partnership with a woman, she gives you feedback, where do you go with it? Do you really let it in? Does it really touch you? Does it transform you? That's one possibility. Do you defend against it? Does it lead to a fight? Do you make the space with your woman so unsafe for her? And by unsafe, I don't mean physical threat, but it's like she pays a price to give you this feedback. And the price is maybe you don't talk to her the rest of the day. Maybe you argue with her. Maybe you try to be right. It's like, so that could be one direction you go in. Another is you hear the feedback and you just start beating the shit out of yourself and feeling so bad for being a man and hating who you are and moping around. And actually, this is another kind of creating an unsafe environment for someone to give you feedback because basically giving you feedback means that you collapse. So this whole question of what is the predicament due on planet Earth due to men's crap, it runs the risk of a man going into that kind of defensiveness or that kind of a swamp. And that will not help you. So I'm reluctant to tell you about the the chain of causation from men being uninitiated, men basically being boys for millennia. It's like this: men being boys for millennia, no initiatory processes on the planet anymore. And then men ruling the world, and then the current problems we have. What I would rather is that you go do this investigation for yourself. And there's tons of resources about this, but you can read some feminist literature. Bell Hooks, read her book about patriarchy, and it's chapter by chapter. It's great. Read King Leopold's Ghost. This is like one example of an uninitiated man having a massive amount of power and decimating the Congo. One man decimating the Congo. There's an incredible line in that book where the author kind of, a lot of the book, the author's sort of invisible. And there's a moment where he comes forward and he's talked about the atrocities in the Congo. And it's like 8 million people dead in the Congo. You probably don't know that number, but that's higher than the number of Jews killed in World War II, the Holocaust. 8 million people genocide in the Congo. And the author comes forward in this book and says, I cannot, something along the lines of like, I cannot help but think that so much of this destruction in the Congo started from this grown man as a child not being loved, basically being a wounded man who never healed and then had a lot of power and was still trying to fix his whatever childhood wound without even knowing it by acquiring the country and going in and sucking the life out of it. There's a film called What a Way to Go by Bennett, last name Bennett. I can't remember his first name, Tim Bennett. Well, check out that film. And my recommendation is like you take these pieces and work them slowly and build your own chain of causation and let yourself feel about it. That for millennia, men have ruled the world. There are no longer initiatory processes in modern culture that would take a boy and turn him into a man. Okay, so that has a particular result on the planet. I move to the final question. What is a man to do now for himself, for the earth? Get initiated. Like it is not too late. No matter what age you are, it is not too late for to begin doing the healing work that you need to do from the many wounds you experienced growing up in whatever family you grew up in and growing up in a culture that basically does not give a shit who you are. There's a lot of wounding from that. You can grow up about that and have your life no longer defined by the wound. But in order to do that, you have to find people. You cannot do this alone. It's like in modern culture, so many of us men are are trained to be alone, trained to try to get through life alone. I think it's maybe even more the case in Western culture and very extremely so in the United States. But there's this thing called the epidemic of loneliness among men. And I know it for myself. I know that I hit a certain age and I realized I hadn't made a new friend in 5 years. And so there's something where we men, it's like we know how to do life alone. We have no idea how to deeply be involved in other people's lives or bring them involved in ours. And so wherever you go, to start going through initiation, to start becoming someone who moves past your wounds, who starts taking real responsibility for this little seed in you to start growing, who starts opening your consciousness about what is happening on the planet and moving beyond whatever learned helplessness you might have about that situation, moving on beyond the despair and learning how to feel. I mean, there's so many initiations, but really learning how to feel. So it's not you're just bringing this into your mind, you're bringing this into your mental body, but that you're also really letting your heart do what for decades you have trained it not to do, which is to feel openly and to start living as though your feelings have something vital for you. Your being, your true values are they're inseparable. You need your feelings because they're inseparable from your feelings. And without being able to feel, the best thing you can do is guess what you care about. There's more I want to say about that. I want to say something, which is this, I have my own journey with waking up, which isn't over yet. Like it never ends. But with waking up, with stepping onto a path of initiation, learning how to feel, and I think looking at basically splashing the cold water in your face and looking at the world, trying to figure out this causation of men being uninitiated and the world being in disaster. Excuse me. It's like it can be very heavy, and it should be like that's part of the process. And part of the process is that growing up and learning how to take responsibility and doing that with a group of other men is delightful. Like it's the more I do it, the more I'm like, what would be more delightful than this? What could be more ecstatic than it's like my best friends. We call each other regularly. We take each other through the biggest emotional processes and initiatory processes of our lives. We challenge each other. We open doorways for each other to be bigger, to be truly bigger. And this is it's like we are building a culture for ourselves. We are building our own culture separate from modern culture we grew up in. We're doing that for ourselves. We're doing that for the next men, the next 18-year-old kid who has no idea who he is to step into. And it is wild, it is unknown, it is the adventure of a lifetime. I think, to be frank, I think it's the adventure that most men are secretly longing for. Even I think it's in that little seed that they are secretly longing for this. And so, with everything I've said, it's like come be part of, I said, come be part of that delight. And the delight will include your heart being broken. It will include you being angry in ways you've never been angry before. It will include you experiencing your fear and discovering, oh my God, I've been so scared of my fear. And now my fear is my resource. Like my fear is what I use to make magic in the world. And all of that coming together, it is a recipe for a life of endless adventure, of delight, of you being. A friend of mine said this to me the other day. I asked him, he's in India, and I asked him, how is it going? And he was there with his new partner, and he said, I am here ending my days well used. And what he meant by that is it's not like he's wringing himself out, uh, using up all his energy in order to push forward some corporate agenda that he's not really attached to. What he meant by that is that all that is the best in him, he's done enough work that it can flow through him and be useful to the world around him, to planet Earth, to the woman that he's in love with, to children, to his projects. And the experience of that, of being well used, is it's delightful. It is what men are made for. Is what men are made for, is to be well used in service that does not come from pressure. It does not come from I should be good and therefore I should serve. It comes from a kind of generosity that's natural as you go through your initiatory journey. And so that's, for me, that's the beach. It's like that's the wonder that's possible, is that instead of ending your days thinking, I can't believe I still work for this company, it's not who I am, or I've got to make more money, or being in some kind of scarcity, like as though life is scarce, that you could end your days trying to sleep fast so you can give more of yourself when you wake up. It's like, imagine that. I've spoken as long as I've spoken. Clinton asked for 10 minutes. I don't care. I hope I get to meet you. Write me. Like, if any of this inspires you, write me, reach out to me, call me. I'm on Telegram. Get yourself involved in the men's initiation culture. Go to Rage Club. Go to the men's expand the box training. Like, just start your path. There are wonders awaiting you, truly. It's like the wonders, the mysteries of the world are awaiting you. We're going to call that a wrap. Goodbye.